As we continue to delve, I like the word delve into Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow, chapter 2 or Surah 2 in the Quran. I'd like to just take a second and kind of reflect on what I've been reading. Instead of just reading one page after one page after one page and just trying to understand it, I really try to take the time to think about what I'm actually reading. This idea of being blind is something that I've thought about for a really, really, really long time, whether you're looking at it from a philosophical perspective, a psychological perspective, or a religious perspective. Firstly, I like to point out a couple things. Just because you're religious or part of a religion doesn't mean you're not blind to something. Now, this is the fascinating thing from a psychological perspective, looking at humans and how we behave. The way you see things are based off a certain presupposition or a certain premise. That premise being the thought process that was given to you in your mind. Maybe you came to that conclusion with your own intellect facing the society around you. So you have your own intellect and then you have the society around you, and you're kind of interacting your own intellect with the society around you. However, that society around you puts pressure on you to have a hierarchy of beliefs, a belief system. Okay, does that make sense? I know that's a lot, but there's a hierarchy of beliefs. Your hierarchy of beliefs reflects what your religion is. Let me explain what this means. So, let's just say that you are a non-believer in anything. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. You believe in something. You just don't know what you believe in. So, what I would say is watch yourself. Watch yourself actually behave. The intellect is the part of the intellect is really watching the emotional reactions inside of your body. So for example, whenever you buy a product, I would challenge that it is always an impulse buy when you buy that product, because you feel an emotional pull towards something and then you justify the action later, which means that you see things in a certain light based off that emotion. I think it's complicated. I don't know, but I think that makes sense. I hope I'm explaining it right. A couple reasons why I wanted to bring this up. So I wanted to reference a couple points here to see what I mean by seeing. And now, if you can see clearly, or at least challenge yourself to say, hey, maybe I'm not seeing things clearly, you can look at these religious texts as a guide to see clearly, regardless of your religion. I don't see why for a Christian person, they can read Descartes, but they can't read Muhammad. Even if you don't believe what it is, you have to understand that these thought processes are very deep. And if you think about things on just the minor level, then you're not seeing it. You have to see it. So okay, I'll give you some examples, okay? So Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 7, ayah 7, God says, the Quran says, God has set a seal upon their hearts and upon their hearing and over their vision as a veil. And for them is great punishment. Why is there great punishment? Because what they can't see is leading them to the wrong direction. Al-Baqarah, verse 18, deaf, dumb, and blind, so they will not return to the right path. The right path is in brackets there. Al-Baqarah, verse 171. The example of those who disbelieve is like that of one who shouts at what hears nothing but calls and cries. They are dumb. They are deaf, dumb, and blind, so they do not understand. But yet they can see, but what are they seeing? So who are you arguing when you're arguing? There's no conversation happening because they can't see the same things that you see. The first step when you're looking at any of this stuff is to open up your mind to say, okay, what are these people seeing? Jesus is saying the exact same thing. I know I got a couple of challenges from the Christians. It's fascinating because it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The Christians want you to see. The Muslims want you to see. What are they asking you to see? They're having a conversation about what God wants you to see. So according to Matthew 15:14, obviously I haven't gone into the Bible yet, but I mean, I'm just jumping in. The translation is from Jesus, Matthew 15:14. Leave them. They are blind guides. If the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a pit. So both the Quran and the Bible are making an argument that you need to be able to see. But the way you see is based off a premise of your original belief structure. I'll say that again because I think it makes a lot of sense. The way you see is based off a premise of your original structure of belief. So think about your life, yeah? You were raised in a certain place, you were raised in a certain community, and that community has given you a set of beliefs. Actually, this is fascinating. Okay, so then you go to Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 170. The translation goes, when it is said to them, follow what God has revealed, they say, no, we shall follow the way of our forefathers. What? And then God replies, even though their forefathers were void of wisdom and guidance? In other words, why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think the way you think? What is the preconceived notion that you have that makes you think that your belief is correct? What are you actually seeing? And when somebody else sees something different than you, are they wrong? And if they were wrong, that would presuppose that you were right. But how do you know that you're right if you're just continuing on a journey of knowing? So the idea is then that the Quran, so far, has objective morality. Now, objective morality means it is what it is. It is what it is, regardless of what you think about it. The challenge, actually, is on you and me, on us, to understand these at a very deep level. So I remember, like, when I was younger, I used to say Adam and Eve. Well, and they had babies, and then their kids had babies with each other. That doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. Okay, but that's if you're strawmanning the idea. What a strawman is you take the weakest version of the argument, and then you burn down that argument. You break the argument. But why would you do that to yourself? Think of it in the deepest way possible. Think about it deeper, and then deeper, and then deeper. And there's layers upon layers. How do you know that your intellect is there? Obviously, to a 10-year-old, a story would be different than it is to a 40-year-old or a 50-year-old because you have different levels of intellect. So you can look at these books. So you look at the Bible, you look at the Quran, you look at the Bhagavad Gita, you look at all of these books and you go, okay, what is it telling me about the world? You go, for example, for somebody like for me right now, what I'm doing is I'm going Quran, world, Quran, world, Quran, world. And what I'm seeing is it's a different version of seeing. It's a different way to see. But in order to see, you have to let go of the way you saw things before. Because the entire substructure of the way you view things is based off your own personality and the view that it's telling you it is. Meaning that you and I could be looking at the same thing, but looking at totally different things. And you only know that, you can't know that, but the only way you can know that is by listening to somebody else. And you're going, what do you see here? Based off your personality type. So you have a personality, and that personality interacts with the society. And as that personality interacts with the society, you're seeing certain things. Now, the weird thing is that your actions change the way you see things, which is moral relativism. Now, what moral relativism means is that things are just morally relative. And the fascinating thing is the more you quote unquote sin, which is missing the mark, the more you see that the things you're sinning about are not actually sins, which means that you're darkening the soul. And then it's darker and you're darker, so you can't see that it's darker because you're blind. I think that makes sense. What do you guys think? Thank you for listening. Okay, goodbye.